Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, let me welcome you to the SMP Capacity Building Training Webinar Series, Future of SMPs Digital Transformation. My name is Irina Gordeladze. I'm a WorldBank consultant, and I will be moderating today's webinar. The joint EU-World Bank Georgia Financial Inclusion and Accountability Project, in collaboration with SARAS and the Georgian Professional Accountancy Organizations, launched a webinar series, a set of online training modules to help build the capacity of SMPs in Georgia. As the content is relevant and useful to SMPs operating across the region, the World Bank has decided to invite PIOs and SMPs from the Eastern Partnership countries and Balkans. Welcome. The series started with Module 1, Future of SMPs, Lessons from the Crisis and Practice Transformation. Participants were advised that the coronavirus crisis had intensified the need of the SMPs to transform their practices to survive and succeed, and were offered recommendations. The recording of the webinar in Georgian language is available at saras.ge. Today's module builds on the first one. Module leader Paul Thompson, Director of the European Federation for Accountants and Auditors for SMEs, and today's distinguished guest speaker, Martin de Bie, Advisor, New Technology and Cross-Industry Innovation and Chair of the European Federation for Accountants and Auditors Digital Working Group, will explain why SMPs must embrace digital transformation. Before I pass the word to Paul, I would like to touch upon a few housekeeping issues. First of all, the Georgian translation of the webinar is available under the German icon. Also, you can type your questions at any time during the webinar in the Q&A chat box. Your questions will be answered later during the Q&A session. Also, please note that this webinar is recorded, the Georgian translation of it. And I will now pass the word to Paul. Paul, over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Irina, and thanks also to the World Bank team. They're based in Georgia for helping pull this event together. As you mentioned, Irina, this is the second in a series of webinars, and we've decided that the issues are so pervasive to small and medium-sized practices across the region that we ought to offer it to our colleagues and friends across the Eastern Partnership countries and also the Balkans. So we welcome all of you today. As Irina mentioned, I'm going to provide a few introductory words recapping on what we covered in the first of this webinar series before handing over to Martin de Bie. Martin de Bie is a friend and a colleague of mine who is based in the Netherlands, and he is an expert on digitalization of small and medium practices, as well as small and medium-sized entities. And you will see from the agenda on the slide in front of you that we then plan to have a Q&A session where you have the opportunity to post some questions. So by way of recap, in our last webinar, the first one, it was a general one about the need for change. Why should small and medium practices contemplate change right now? Well, I think this is best summed up, if you will, by a recent report produced by the ACCA, which happens to be a member of the European Federation of Accountants and Auditors, for whom I'm the director. And in this publication called COVID-19, the SMPs Road to Recovery, they said that more than ever before, the small and medium-sized practice is the trusted advisor to small businesses. And the COVID-19 crisis is a call to firms, smaller practices, to transform further, more quickly. And digital transformation of SMPs is key to accelerating the pace of change, ensuring durability and driving better understanding of their client needs. And the ACCA went on to say that the pandemic, which has blighted our lives, if you will, over the last year or so, has in fact accelerated digital adoption and the need for digital adoption in areas such as e-commerce, for reaching out to clients, and remote working for connecting and reaching out to staff. So let me recap on some of the things that we covered in the last webinar briefly, but as I said, the main focus for today's session is digital. In the last webinar, we had speakers from the International Federation of Accountants, and they talked through how practices can go about changing, transforming, using a relatively recent publication, a publication from May 2020 of IFAC called the Practice Transformation Action Plan, a roadmap for the future. And this roadmap for the future has been translated into the Georgian language, and I include the links in this presentation, which can be made available to all participants after the event. This document, this short document, which has been translated into Georgian and we hope in due course into Russian, sets out 4 key aspects to transformation: the need to embrace change, the need to leverage new technologies, a need to focus on managing your people or talent management, the need to evolve, develop the firm's operating model and build its ability to provide advisory services. So that is an introduction to the IFAC Practice Transformation Action Plan. The core part of this is the need to embrace change. The global pandemic has reinforced the fact that we can't sit on our laurels anymore. We have to be prepared to change. And a key part of changing is actually being able to anticipate the need for change before it actually happens. So there's an awful lot of current research around the need for accountants to anticipate the future and to make changes ahead of it being too late. In a nutshell, change is critical. There is a risk that without change, the practice becomes obsolete or run out of business. So it's an important facet that we get our heads around. Now, in terms of leveraging technology, which is the focus for today's session, the IFAC Practice Transformation Action Plan sets out 5 aspects to it, or 5 steps, if you will. The first being the need to conduct an environmental scan. And of course, you know, with COVID-19 right now, it's very clear that this is a very important part of the environment that we're operating in, and we have to make appropriate changes. Secondly, there is a need to align the technology plan with the long-term objectives and strategy of the practice. What does the practice seek to do? Which clients does it seek to serve? What service offerings would it prefer to focus on? And then to formulate a simple but realistic plan of implementation. Thirdly, IFAC advocate the need to accelerate adoption of the cloud. And in fact, in the past year or so, many practices have worked to a remote only model by necessity. The future of accounting and the provision of its services is very much connected with cloud technologies, so it's important that they are fully utilized. Fourthly, IFAC suggests that one involves your clients in technology decisions. Clients are very keen to be working with forward-looking practices, not old-fashioned, backward-looking ones. It's important to talk to clients about how technology will help them, because the client provision will be improved, because perhaps even costs might be reduced. And fifth and finally, IFAC suggested in this last webinar that one needs to identify and provide sufficient support to an internal technology champion. So the practice may have somebody on staff who's particularly keen with technologies and very comfortable with using them. And those are the people that you've got to tap into and encourage and let them lead on the process. Now, why should one digitally transform? Why should one leverage technologies and embrace these emerging tools and solutions? Embracing technology is reckoned to be key to improving practice efficiencies, helping you to do more with less, more efficiently, more effectively, at lower cost. It's reckoned that this will enhance service delivery, the ability for you to service your clients. For example, using 24/7 remote tools, you can be at all times, wherever you are, on vacation or whatever, you can be constantly in contact with your clients, providing them with advice as you go. It's also reckoned that technologies can motivate staff, especially younger staff. Younger staff do like to get their hands dirty with new technologies, so it's always not a bad thing to be up on these new technologies, and in fact perhaps even to give the leadership on technology development and adoption to those younger staff members. And fourth and finally, a very good strong reason for embracing the technologies is the ability for you to expand your suite of service offerings to your clients. So, for example, a number of practices have found that they can offer advisory services whereby you're able to provide advice remotely on a regular basis to your clients as and when it is most needed. But what is this going to require? What do we recommend? What does IFAC recommend to small and medium practices in terms of how one goes about leveraging technology? Well, first they say that it's a continuous process. It's not a discrete process where you just do it and that's it, it's done. But rather, you've got to continually be investing in new technologies, investing the time to get an appreciation of what is available and going about implementing those technologies that you would like to use. It does demand, or should demand, discussing with other firms similar to yours about their experiences, and also discussing with the clients how the new technologies, what new technologies might be more beneficial for them. And third and finally, it requires you to, as I've mentioned already today, the need for you to adopt cloud technologies. So in sum, before I hand over to Martin, successful adoption and implementation of new technologies will demand you to have a coordinated approach and a simple strategic plan on how you're going to use these technologies. It's going to require you to identify and support an internal champion or two, somebody that's really keen and proficient. It's going to require you to set out some simple procedures and ensure that those procedures are followed. And finally, and I think very importantly, it's going to demand ongoing staff training at all levels, from the partner right down to the most recently recruited staff member. So that concludes my recap of what EFAA covered in the first webinar, of which there is a recording which you can view at your own leisure. Before handing over to Martin, I just want to remind you that if you do have any questions, please do type them into the chat box, preferably in English, but if it's in Georgian and Russian, we'll try to get to them and translate them. So without further ado, Martin, welcome. It's good to have you with us today. We're in your hands now for the next 40 minutes or so.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank the organization, the WorldBank, Paul, and also the attendees to join this event and to provide this event. I have 15 slides to tell you a little bit about how to digitize your practice, but first to give you some impression who I am and from what starting point I'm going to do this presentation. I'm going to tell why change is so important. First of all, my background is accountancy, so I started with a very small accounting practice in Rotterdam, and I did everything, and I was a little bit known with computers, and in the 90s they loved those kind of young people who know something about computers. So I was very much introduced in the world of the accounting and the automation. In 2015, an IT entrepreneur bought KPMG SME department in the Netherlands, and I noticed that. And he asked me, because he noticed some blogs of mine about change in the accounting industry, could you please help me? Because I work in a big accounting firm, and you as an advisor in innovation, can you help me to see what kind of technologies we should embrace in our organization? And we will make a roadmap with other people to change this organization in a very digital, transformed accounting firm. Well, it was a nice thought. We didn't know what to expect. And I started at the 1st of January 2016. And on this information and let's say the journey until now, I'm doing this presentation to you just to explain what is digitalized, what is the impact on your practice, and what should you care about. Change is not it's big. It can be on small items, because as Paul already mentioned, we have clients, and if we change too fast, the clients will say, what's happening? They are a little bit strange to us. So we have to be very careful what speed you are changing. But we need to change, that's true, but I will go on further in this presentation. But I think it's also an effort for us all. It's not one office, and what I also are promoting in the Netherlands, but also in Belgium or in Germany where I'm talking. We as an industry are an important part in the data chain of every country, because SMEs provide financial information. We are the directors, as the directors of the film. We check if everything is okay by law, and then the information goes to the government, to banks, etc. So we are a very important layer within the data chain, and therefore digitalization, change, transformation is very important. 1 moment. What you see is digital transformation isn't easy. It is a strategy. It's not reading a book and introducing some tools and say to your organization, well, let's do this. No, it's a well thought strategy. You have to know exactly what you want to go to. You need to read books. You need to follow like this kind of presentations, but also you have to talk to other, let's say, firms in the accounting industry, what's really going on. And also, what's the impact on my client services? Because you can change something, but what's the impact on the client services? What I mentioned, digital strategy is a well thought process. Going back to what we learned in 2016, it impacts the culture of the organization. And more important, you need to have a plan to explain to your employees your clients what steps you are going to make and what kind of speed, because just changing from one to another, it's too difficult and gives too much problems. And you are a trusted advisor in the channel, so you need to be a very continuity in your services. And one of the things which I really like is Simon Sinek. If you want to change, you first have to find out what, how, and why. Those 3 questions. And if you can answer those questions, then you can even start with a digital strategy process with your organization, thinking, okay, what do we need to do? What kind of technology should we embrace? Should we do it on accounting? Should we do it on our tax services? Should we do it on our audit services? But what on the client side, what is happening there? Because that's also important to know, because as you know already that with the COVID situation, a lot of SMEs are going fast into a digital transformation, starting with a web shop, starting with cloud solutions. And what you see already also is that, and that's also you see in this slide, thank you, Paul, as estimated 70% of the new value created in the economy is based on digitalization. And therefore, we also need to be aware of that, because if you know what's happening, you can change. If you don't know what's happening and you want to change, yeah, you have a difficult road ahead. And what we see now, and that's what I'm doing at the moment, therefore, I'm also looking, let's say, what's happening in the industries, because industries are changing and we are delivering services to various industries. So you have to know exactly also what kind of speed you have to deliver some services. And going to the next slide. What we think is important, and that's what we embrace in the Netherlands in our firm, is a data-driven approach. Because we deliver compliance services. We have an annual account, a statutory account. Some practices do some bookkeeping for clients, and we have a tax advice. And with reporting, I mean the audit. But most of those, let's say, work is repeating a lot. And that can be, and what is repeating can also be automated. But then if you want to automate it, you have to know exactly what kind of software is, let's say, available in your country, and be very critical, because what we did in our organization was we very focused on what kind of tools we are using yet. We're already using a lot of cloud solutions, but we were very critical on, and we spoke with the suppliers, okay, what's the future? And can you connect your system with the other system? Can you connect your reporting tool with the accounting tool? Can you connect? And that's when we found out that standardization is very important. Standardization of data, because otherwise you are a lot of work in mapping. So you have to connect one data connection to another connection to speak the right language in the applications. So we went on to a kind of a change with the suppliers. Some suppliers went away because we couldn't work with them, and we chose very carefully suppliers, cloud solutions, which can help us to, let's say, transfer in the future following our digital strategy. And that is a data-driven accounting firm using the data within, very important, within the GDPR, which is in Europe active. But we wanted to use our data. So data is one of the things which can, that's why we are keepers of data, where we can do a lot more business on. What we also saw, and that's especially in 2020 started, is real-time data, because most of the accounting firms also in the Netherlands are now very busy with the annual statutory accounts of 2020. And the SMEs have an older expectation. They want to know what's ahead. What is the what's the current situation? Where am I at 2 months? Where am I at 3 months? Because they all have problems, and but we are still busy with 2020 because that's a thing we need to deliver as a commodity item. But if you want to add value, you need to also give let's say, looking forward with the client to the future. And that's difficult because then you need actual financial information. And I will go on further in this presentation how we did it. But I think, especially now at the current situation, digitalization is really speeding up. And in our, let's say, our clients expect that we can see what they are ahead, what they are, let's say, the next quarter, what is their solvability. We talk about continuity in our statutory reports, but let's say our clients want to know, okay, can I pay my bills the next month or the month after that? Can you help me with that? Can you give me these insights? So data will be very important, and therefore standardization will be also a very important, let's say, message in our industry. This is an example, it's in English, I'm sorry for that, but this is an example of one of the suppliers we have, which mentioned, okay, what do you need to provide add value service to the future? You still need to do, let's say, the statutory account, but what you want to advise your client more regarding what's ahead. Now, first of all, what I noticed is data standardization. If you are using different standards in your organizations, it's a lot of work, a lot of time, and I know our practice is based on hours spent, but you need to standardize your system. So in your digital strategy, you have to find out if you can use standardization in your organization. And it can be very simple. That can be, let's say, if you have a bookkeeping, you do the bookkeeping service for clients, use the same standard of the GL accounts. Well, I'll go further on that, how we did it. But also, if you do that, you can easily analyze and do benchmarking in the future. But still the difference, if you have only 30 clients, it's difficult to do benchmarking. So therefore, what I already mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, it's, let's say, this digital change is also an effort, even in Georgia, to say, how can we as an industry can upgrade to, let's say, as an industry and compare data together on a way that our clients still trust us with the information, because we need a lot of data at the moment to advise. Also, predictive intelligence and new advisory service is also ahead if you are really using the data-driven approach. And that is also what we are looking at the moment in the Netherlands. Can we already use this predictive intelligence? Because, yeah, what I already mentioned, a lot of clients I don't know where they are at 2 or 3 months from now, and they really want this advice. What we also see with the data-driven approach is that there are growth opportunities. So what we mentioned, entrepreneurs are really need an advisor to listen, not let's say an advisor who is busy processing data. If this process can be automated, you have more time for your clients. So therefore, look for the right suppliers, cloud solutions, and if you have difficulty with a supplier, connect with another accounting firm to see if you can some little pressure on the supplier to get the right motivation, because you are a client in need of digital tools. Also, what we see is in the Netherlands is to invest in soft skills, because a lot of accountants are busy with figures. But at this moment, a lot of clients of us are in the need of some listening ear. They want to tell something, they want to ask something, and the soft skills is a very huge investment we need to do, because if you automate your processes, you get more time, you get more clients, but also you have more time to talk with your client. And I think that's the most important, to listen and to advise based on financial and non-financial information. Also, what is very important is the IT data skills. But that's also a danger zone, because you're another consultant, an IT consultant. So be aware, and I'm also advising my colleagues in the Netherlands, don't be an IT consultant. If you want to see that you want to, let's say there's an SME who says, okay, I want to digitalize, can you help me? Use an external party, advise, but don't do it yourself, because yeah, it's very complex if you are, let's say, advising on IT. But you need to have some skills, and there are, let's say, some advisory which you can, as an extra service, can provide. But don't be the IT consultant. Also, companies need to look ahead, what I already mentioned, not backwards. You need to be backwards because you need to process the statutory report for the government and for the tax authorities. But also, you have to find ways to gather the actual financial information to get to the client and say, hey, this is what is happening next year, next month, this is what's the month afterwards, and I think this is the best advice. And then you will see that a lot of clients would be very happy with you. And let's say with the digital data-driven approach, you can have new client acquisition, increased advisory revenue, because what is operational, what is repeating, what can be automated. You have more time to do advisory, which is most times good paid. The margin is going up, and also it's help improving client retention, because that's, yeah, let's say clients are the most important thing. That's for life. Going back to the next one. But what is the biggest bottleneck for growth? And this is, let's say, from my position, from the Netherlands. What we see in our organization, that is accounting is the bottleneck, because I've got a lot of colleagues who do everything for the client, do the bookkeeping, the tax, and the annual, the statutory accounts. In big accounting firms, there's mostly separated, but in smaller practices, colleagues are doing everything from bookkeeping to statutory reports. But that's also, let's say, cost a lot of time. And what we see in the accounting, which can be automated, if you are automate this, you get more, let's say, time. What I said, right people, wrong task. The accountants who are now focused on providing advice are too concerned with accounting. If you are automated, they have more time to spend to their clients, which is a good advice, a paid advice. Also, the data is better if you have a, let's say, dedicated team doing the bookkeeping, or let the bookkeeping done. And also what Paul mentioned, it attracts also new talents, because let's say what we see in the Netherlands, and I have next week, I have an interesting presentation to students in Groningen, accountants, where I tell them also about what the opportunities are if you are in an office which have a digital strategy with interesting processes. So again, a digital strategy is very important. What we see now in your on your screen is a trending something we see in the US. What we also copied a little bit in the Netherlands is that bookkeeping can be automated. And there is a company, BotKeeper, who is got capital from Google. So that's for me a warning sign. If Google invests in accounting, it should be interesting. They invested money, so and some technology, but they're not, let's say, the owner. But BotKeeper is an organization which says, okay, I see your problem as accountant in the US, and especially now there's a strong growth in the US, because also there the accountants have no time. They have a lot of time spent in processing the bookkeeping, and less time in advising clients. And by using BotKeeper, they have more time now to spend on advice, because they have outsourced their bookkeeping to this organization. And it's a trend, because we see also now in the Netherlands that bank industry is also looking ahead to automate or to take over the bookkeeping. Why? Because the banks are also in the need. They see payments, but they don't see the invoices. And if they see the invoice with the invoice date and the date which the invoice need to be paid, and the actual payment, they can also see what the accounts payable term is. And that's a very important, let's say, factor for the banking industry. See if the client is going into trouble, because if the client is, let's say, from 16 days to 30 days delay in payment, it's an alert for a bank. And that's why the banking industry in Europe is also looking in accounting. Oh, one too far. But you can do it also yourself, automating the bookkeeping. So what we did, and this is an example how we do it in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, we have, going back one question, this is one too far. A moment. No. Somebody is in the. So this one. So what we introduced is the reference classification system of financial information. So in the Netherlands, the government asked a lot of stakeholders in the Netherlands Wait. Oh, somebody's in my. I'm sorry. Somebody's now. Yeah. So a lot of, let's say, we have a kind of system, and the problem is that every bookkeeping in the Netherlands, every accountant has a different general ledger. And what we do with reporting tools is that we standardize the data in the reporting tools, not in the bookkeeping, to provide to the account, let's say to the account, the tax office or the government, to XBRL. But what we mentioned, why don't you standardize in the bookkeeping? So in the Netherlands, we introduced a kind of coding, which is standardizing the bookkeeping, which also gives some challenges, but also opportunities, because with this extra coding, you can still use your own schedule, your GL schedule per client, but with the introducing of an extra field in the bookkeeping, you have standardization. And the importance of that is that you also can use this standardization to do data analytics, because you know, for example, in this, what you see now on your picture is that this is an example for a GL account. You see what you know, left is the code, which is numeric, then description, but on the right side, you see the standard classification. And in the example, you also see that stocks is in the reference code is on the left side is a letter combination, but in the numeric way, it can be different per company. And now in our, let's say, organization, we have a lot of different ledgers, and we have now standardized it, which gives us the opportunity to use the bookkeeping and actual bookkeeping to do reporting, and not the standard reporting tools we have to make a statutory report for the government. And that is very important for us. And you see also that a lot of accountants are adopting this standardization. That should be also interesting, say, to set up in other countries, make a standard, because now we can also make a kind of data lake with other accountants, anonymous, if we may, and then say, okay, what's the sector doing? What's the what is an industry doing at the moment on a certain way? Because we all speak the same language and not different GL accounts. This is an example. I know that you are using IFRS. We are using Dutch GAAP. But what you see is that we connect also this reference codes to the standard codes for reporting, which also enable to, if you do the bookkeeping on make it standard, you can easily also do, let's say, process reporting to banking industry. And what we're looking now at the moment is, can we deliver a set of data to the bank during the year based on the reference code, so the clients can help better by financing and not by doing, let's say, a very difficult report with a lot of work. So we are using digitalization at the moment to see if we can, with standardization, give faster information to stakeholders with, let's say, help of the clients, and the clients must agree with that, but they are willing because they all want to know what's ahead. What we, and that's my role of the European Federation as chair of the Digital Working Group, also is we also are attending to the project Early Warning, which is a project which helps, let's say, entrepreneurs in distress. And what you see is that cash flow is key. Can we see if a customer has enough, let's say, liquidity, solvability to go ahead, to go further in the future? And therefore, our role as an accountant is as important as it is, because we can see if the data is correct, is up to date, and if we use standardization, we can deliver faster information. But we are important in this data chain, and therefore, Early Warning is very happy that also the accounting industry is attending to help the SMEs or clients to look more to the future if we can help them, or to see if they're really in distress and not wait too long, then it's too late. One of the projects we have now already, because I showed earlier an overview that we have also prediction. Now, this is also, we are a little step ahead with, because 216 accounting firm is a front leading technology. we are already using now the standardization with tools to see what the client is doing the coming month, and also to do some scenario thinking. Okay, what if you do an investment? What's the impact on the cash flow? Should we do an extra call to the bank or to other investors? So we are already looking ahead with clients, and it's the first steps, but that will be also our future, because if we automate or let's say or repeating work, we can do this kind of advisory, which really helps our clients. A long time ago, it was 2018, the European Federation of Accountants had a digital event where the SME United in Brussels had also a short presentation. And one of those advice, which really keeps in my mind, is, okay, what do you expect from accountants? And what they mentioned at first, be a digitalized SMP to help the SME perform better. Dus dit means be first digitalize yourself before you digitalize your clients. And therefore, going back to the first slide I had, digital strategy is important, because that's the basic of your strategy, how you can also help your clients at the right moment. And also what they mentioned is help the SMEs in the digitalization process. But still, the first step is be a digitalized SMP yourself before helping your SMEs to the next level. One of the things we also did, and also let's say with the what I've learned with our in the Netherlands with our firm, but we also did with the Digital Working Group as a chair. We started, we copied a model from India, the digital competency maturity model, and this is a model which helps, let's say, with a lot of questions on what position the SMP is regarding digitally competency. And also it gives you some help in the future to see, hey, maybe I have to more look at this topic within my organization. It can be on cybersecurity, it can be on how do you have enough people who know about the tools we are using. So this is a tool which help, let's say, on the first, the front flag, the former slide, be a digitalized SMP first. And this tool can help you, and maybe Paul can give you more words on that. It's not available yet in your language, but it's a really interesting tool which could help, and it's, let's say, used by other countries which are a member of the EFAA to see where they are at the moment on digitalization. It's a tool. It's not, let's say, give me advice, but it's give a position where you are. Paul, I think I'm on a slide and I want to get it back to you.
Thanks so much, Martin. That's great. I will plan to share with you a couple of short video clips of UK accounting practices, very small practices, which have undertaken digital transformation, and each clip is quite short. They're about 3 or 4 minutes long. And they're also available, as you can see on the screen in front of you, following the links in the Georgian language. The WorldBank has kindly funded the translation of the videos together with an introductory article. But I want to share at least one of these with you, and then we will roll into the Q&A. In the chat box in relation to the Q&A, I can see a lot of great questions. Martin, as we go through this video, you might want to take a quick look at them. A number of them are actually in the English language, and we're going to have plenty of time to get to your questions. And I think it will be very interesting to hear your and my take on that. But before I do, as I say, let's move over to one of the videos, and just bear with me while I ensure that we have the correct screen and that you can hear the video correctly. And
hi, I'm Nigel Adam.
And I'm Nikki Allen.
We are joint managing partners of Audit. We're a practice that operates out of the Midlands, Milton Keynes, and we specialise in working with family businesses and the SME sector.
We don't hear it well.
The transformation started probably 2012-ish. We were getting quite frustrated at the time because we could see that we needed to move toward digitalisation, and we came to realise that actually we were getting the wrong people to start that transformation process. So what we do every year is we have what we call a strategy day, which is an away day where we...
Hi, I'm Nigel Adams.
And I'm Nikki Adams.
We are joint managing partners of Audit. We're a practice that operates out of the Midlands, in the Milton Keynes, and we specialise in working with family businesses and SME sector in the UK.
The transformation for us started probably 2012-ish. We were getting quite frustrated at the time because we could see that we needed to move toward digitalisation, and we came to realise that actually we were getting the wrong people to start that transformation process. So what we do every year is we have what we call a strategy day, which is an away day where we close the office for the day, take the team out, and we talk about whatever's topical at that time. And of course, then it was, how are we going to digitise? It was really to get the feedback from our younger team members as to where they saw the future of the practice and what sort of practice did they want to build. And it was amazing because actually every department had a spokesperson that was under 25 that stood up and said where they felt that the firm should go. And it was all towards using technology more wisely and looking at the latest things. And we set up a completely different division. We called it AV Cloud, and it was theirs. It was they wanted to embrace that as effectively their own business within our business. And that really started the transformation process off, because actually digitization is about a completely different way of working. It's trying to change your mindset. You don't need to sit at a desk anymore. You can be anywhere in the world running your business. And it's just taking some people a lot longer to actually jump, and because it is a cost up front. But we knew we had to push that investment in at the beginning to get the whole thing off the ground. We work in a pod system where we mix experience with tech savviness, and that works really, really well because both sides need each other to work well. And one of the things that we started doing a few years ago was profiling everybody that comes into the team. One time I was getting very frustrated because we kept taking people on and they didn't work and we couldn't understand why. And actually it was because the mix wasn't quite right. You know, you only need one person to feel that they don't want to go down that road to spoil it for everybody else. And profiling played an important part in that because it meant that we could see how they would mix with the people that were already here.
We were a heavy compliance business. The problem that we were encountering at the time was that we were struggling to scale the business because it was very reliant on individuals. I think as digitisation came on board, it allowed us to be able to scale, take more clients on board, but also to be able to take the information that we were gaining from the clients from the digital programs. We were able to give true proactive advice and engage with our clients in a much more positive, consistent service. So as a practice, it allowed us to grow with infrastructure quite significantly, which was fantastic for us. It allowed us to actually engage more team members to offer a broader suite of services. It's allowed us to identify new income streams. It's allowed us to engage with our clients, and I think that's another big thing where I think the role of the accountant has now changed. For us, it's very much about talking to our clients on a regular basis, because digitisation has allowed automation of a lot of those repetitive pieces of work that otherwise would have absorbed staff's time. So there's a greater, I think, fulfilment for our staff. I think digitisation as well, though, has allowed us to broaden the service we can offer to a volume. We're very much volume-based as a business. So we've got a large volume of businesses like our own. We're a family business. You know, we typically work with startups to about 20 million, but the emphasis throughout is always family. That's who we are. That's who we empathise with. We understand those issues, and that's where digitalisation has allowed us to be able to offer a broader service to a wider set of clients that otherwise wouldn't be able to benefit from it because they'd be considered too small or wouldn't be attractive to some of the consultancy-led practices. Digitalisation is an enabler. It still doesn't replace human contact and humanisation. The human aspect is absolutely important. I might even argue that the human interaction is more important in a business like ours than it is in a partner-led business, because you have to communicate that much better and you have to communicate with multiple clients with multiple issues. We do lots of work with American companies who are looking to rebase in the UK. We also do a lot of work in Australia, New Zealand, and really throughout Europe. I think the key thing for us has obviously been the impact, not just internally in terms of digitalisation, but how that translates to our clients. We've got dedicated transformation team members here who go and work with clients in their start on the transformation journey. And that can be just typically putting them onto a platform, looking at suitable apps that will help them to actually manage their business better.
We're very open with our numbers, we're very open with our decision making, why we make decisions, why we do the things that we do. And hopefully that helps, even if they don't end up staying with us, it helps them in their career in the long term because they're getting a really good grounding.
We're able to engage with our clients on the stuff that's really important. And that's what digitalisation has allowed us to do, both internally but also to our clients. And I think the impact has been huge.
Okay, I hope you enjoyed that little video clip. I do have another one. It's a little bit shorter, and again, it's another practice based in the UK, which does a lot of business internationally. So I will launch that video right now.
Hi, I'm Alex Falcon-Huerta. I'm the founder of Soren Falcon Accountancy. I established my business back in 2015. The goal and the vision was to be a global company, to look after international clients, to be. Hi, I'm Alex Falcon-Huerta. I'm the founder of Soren Falcon Accountancy. I established my business back in 2015. The goal and the vision was to be a global company, to look after international clients, to be able to help them launch in the UK and to be their feet on the ground and vice versa. We set up to be fully cloud, digital and paperless. And so we can make sure that we're running and looking after their businesses as efficiently as possible. Launch in the UK, there is so much that they need to understand and to make sure that they work towards the UK legislation, and we felt it was something that we were able to offer them. It was actually when I went over to Xerocon back in 2015, I met with global accountants in Wellington, and they had the same situation, and so basically I recognised that it was something that would be really enjoyable to work with. As well as local customers, we work with global clients, and we're just able to make sure that we can be their feet on the ground. The other area is because we work a lot with SaaS businesses, software as a service businesses, we also recognise they don't want to just sell their businesses in the UK, but they want to sell internationally. So we took this as an opportunity to be able to open up companies for them in other countries. So our global community with Xero and with ACCA has been a huge part of our growth. When we launched Soren Falcon, we had the vision of having it to be fully cloud, paperless and digital. And the main reasons around that is, one, so that we can offer agile remote working, and also so that we can attract international clients. Just because we're based in the UK, it didn't mean that we just needed to focus on the UK market. It meant that we could offer our services to people around the world. With the technology, it has enabled us to be able to deliver those services to those customers. And it doesn't really matter about time zones, because we can work in the background, whether they're sleeping or whether they're awake or vice versa. And so we can deliver that service to those customers and make sure that we take care of all of their financial functions, because the cloud technology has enabled us to do that. I'm actually an ACCA representative for International Assembly, and I represent England. And so I have an opportunity to meet up with people around the world from 54 different countries. So that's allowed me to grow my network even further. And I do communicate and touch base with them on any kind of area, for example, Zimbabwe or Russia. I've recently just signed up a client who has a subsidiary in Russia, and their accountant didn't speak English, and I was able to use my network to be able to communicate with that Russian accountant. So the ACCA has allowed me to grow that network.
Okay, well, I hope you found those video clips interesting. I do hope that you could see and hear them properly. Obviously, with new technology, there's often this perennial challenge, isn't there, with it working. Touch wood. Yeah. So what I'd now like to do is to commence our Q&A session. Martin and I, incidentally, after this event, are very open to you posing questions, sending your questions via email, but I'm hoping to get through as many of these questions as possible. But without sort of further ado, Irina, can I hand over to you to take us through the questions so that Martin and I can respond to them?
Sure, let me just fix my video. Okay, that should be fine. Well, before we switch to the questions to the audience, from the audience, let me ask you one question that I have. What role can SMPs play in the digitalization of their SME clients? Can you elaborate on that?
You or Paul, me? Well, I think it's what we already mentioned in our presentation. They can have a big role because what clients are doing is, especially, I don't know how you do it in your country, but first they Google. They first Google, okay, to look for an answer. But if it's going to digitalization, it's mostly they refer to their accountant because they expect from the past already, and I know from the 90s there was the same position from clients as from SMEs. They go to their accountant, ask them about advice, about what kind of tools they need to use, about bookkeeping. At that moment, a lot of question about a web shop, how to connect the web shop to the financial situation, financial application. But also what we see is questions about cybersecurity. So you see that the SMP is more and more involved to advise on this level. And what we see at this moment that if you look to big firms, they have people already at their office who can handle this kind of questions. But for smaller practices, even for our office, we don't have those people in our office, but we really want to help a client. So if we got those questions, we really are looking for the best answers or the best persons to answer them, because it's good that they trust us and it's good that they come with us with those questions. But yeah, be aware of what you do, what you say, and use the right channels to provide the information to clients. But it's a good, for me, it's good to see that the SMEs are asking us those questions.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just weigh in, I think, you know, Martin's made this critical point that a good small and mid-sized practice is acquainted with, has relationships with a whole range of different providers, including IT consultants, including lawyers, funding institutions, and the rest of it. And therefore, the SMP can help the small business make the connection with the right people that have the expertise. I think it's unlikely that the SMP, the small practice itself, will have the expertise, the bandwidth necessary to do it. Some will choose perhaps to have a bit of an IT consultancy angle to their work. But the vast majority of SMPs, I mean, they're accountancy practices, they're not IT consultants. So you would expect them perhaps more likely simply to say, hey, you know what, if you want help doing this, then I know somebody that can help. Yeah. So that they make the connections that way.
Yeah, and also, Edina, what you see also in the Netherlands is that the small medium practices already also are binding their knowledge into new organizations, sharing this knowledge on digitalization. So that's also an interesting development, that instead of solving it yourself, is connecting to other accounting firms to see if you can give, let's say, training on certain aspects, because I saw one of the questions also on Power BI, which is a huge opportunity for us. But you see a lot of the Netherlands now with digitalization, helping each other, finding programs together which can help us as SMPs to advise our SMEs better. So maybe interesting to see if this development also can be done in other countries.
Thank you, Martin, Paul. Well, I will encourage everyone to type the questions in the Q&A box, preferably in English. If not possible, we will try to translate. The first question is about the blockchain. What about blockchain in consulting firms? The question comes from SMG.
Well, yeah, it's let's say the question is, let's say, what about blockchain in consulting firms? And going back, let's say, to the basic, what's the impact of blockchain in our industry? And let's say within 3 hours, I'm also attending a webinar from a work group in the US about blockchain. What's the impact on audit and accounting? What's the impact of internal controls? What's the impact in taxation of blockchain technology? And I think that is like in your countries, cryptocurrencies are often used now by SMEs for using for payments, etc. And what's our position on that? But what you also see is that blockchain technology is, let's say, used by certain companies to find kind of an audit trail, or let's say there are, I know a little bit about blockchain, unfortunately, but yeah, there are some thoughts about can an accountant, because blockchain also involves, let's say, an automatic process, let's say predefined, and can an accountant give an assurance on the work, how the blockchain works? And there's a, let's say, it was a time, it was 2016, 2017, it was a hype. Then it went a little bit down, and now you see again with the Bitcoin on a high level that there's a lot of questions also here about what about blockchain? And blockchain is a technology which can be used to make, let's say, processes efficiency. You can combine it with like an audit trail with clients. There are a lot of opportunities, but the basic is, I think, to collect all the questions. And what I will hear this evening also with from the US, because they already are processing this kind of what's the impact on industry. And knowing the impact, you also know exactly what you can do as an industry within the country on this topic. Hopefully this will answer a little bit the question of the question of the lady.
I think so. Thank you, Martin. The next question is about IT solutions, cloud solutions. Which cloud solutions do you use?
Mm-hmm.
And whether you can advise about data analytics tools, the ones that are more efficient for compliance business.
Yeah, it's a good question. We use, let's say, we are a fully cloud firm, so we have nothing more on, let's say, local machines. So we're using Office, and with Office you have Power BI. So we use Power BI as data analytics tool. We have some people trained for that, and what I already mentioned, we have already some organization supported by many accounting firms in the Netherlands who are giving some training to accountants, because the big danger of not knowing well of using tools like Tableau of Power BI is that you connect to a certain system, and before you know it, you are transferring GDPR dangerous information on the internet, and you have to be very careful with that. So one of my let's say warnings with the organization is you can do everything with Power BI, but as soon as it involves, let's say, salary administration, wage information, tax information, you have to be careful, because if you, let's say, if you misuse it, and let's say a paper will see that accounting firms are using data on a different way, one bad accountant can impact the complete accounting industry. That's what we see in the Netherlands. But we use, let's say, Power BI. We use several Dutch accounting cloud solutions, especially for the Netherlands legislation. But we also connect with Xero if we have an, let's say, a company from outside. For reporting tool, we also use from another country, from Belgium, a cloud solution. So that's so it's all, let's say, even our tax solution is cloud-based. But for us, it's very important that those software supplies connect to each other. So if we prepare in the accounting solution this financial information, I don't want to export it. I want to transfer it through the application to another application. So we have less people transferring data outside of the applications. So the API, the connectivity is for me very important to make it safe and controllable. But we have, yeah, let's say with the question about please advise any free learning platforms. I can think afterwards. I can share it with Paul or to Irina, to the organization, to see okay what kind of what's also available in your area.
Thank you. I think it will be very useful.
Yeah, if I could just sort of weigh in there. I mean, I'm the director at the European Federation of Accountants and Auditors. We are not a small practice. We're an international federation, but we're just 3 people working part-time remotely, 1 in Brussels, 1 in Madrid, and 1 here in New York City. And we use Office 365. We've obviously got very familiar with using Microsoft Teams and the whole Microsoft suite of product. I have gotten to see Power BI. It seems to be quite a good tool. One other thing I would say in terms of there's a proliferation of apps available. And some of these apps help small practices provide a very specific type of service. So, for example, you will find apps which talk small businesses through business continuity, business survival. And you can run practically an entire line of service around just that one single app. In terms of free learning materials, yeah, I mean, if we can receive an email, we can certainly share a few ideas there. Finding stuff on the internet that's good and free and reliable is sometimes problematic, but I do know, for example, that ACCA has a lot of useful materials, including archive webinars that will help talk you through certain specific products. I do know as well that if you take, for example, Power BI, which is a Microsoft product, you'll find you only have to go onto Google, onto YouTube, and you can pull up free tutorials which will talk you through the basics of how to use the tool. Because, of course, not surprisingly, perhaps, because they're trying to sell you this stuff, so they've got to show you how to use it. So they do provide some simple free tutorials to go with it.
Thank you, Paul. Well, you partially answered. The next question is also about how to improve the knowledge with working with big data. And what are the most applicable softs for processing big databases? Would you like to?
Well, that's let's say a difficult question because let's say because of my position as chair of the Digital Working Group from the EFAA, I'm also involved with Project Early Warning, where let's say we discuss also with some universities who are most let's say knowledge, they have more knowledge about data, analytics, etc. So we are looking for ways to connect to universities in certain countries, if we can use their knowledge on this, let's say on the knowledge on how to use big data. You have already some, let's say, commercial parties. Commercial is also expensive in most way, but as an industry, it's also interesting to see if you have a kind of governing organization in your country. Can we connect with a university in your country to see if we can do much more on big data analytics? And again, what I mentioned already, if you want to do analytics, I had it last week. I went to a university and I came with 1 million data, and it was not enough. So they are really, let's say, very good in saying, yes, you have to be very careful if you want to use big data on certain, let's say, advices, or do you want to use for advice? So you need a lot of data, and that makes it also important for us as an industry to see how we can connect to each other and how we can connect data anonymity. So you cannot select which company is the data from, but we can reuse this data on certain industries, which can benefit us to advise our clients better in the digital age. And that's something I'm really trying to investigate with the help of the EFAA, but also with some universities to see, is it possible to share this kind of data so or SMPs have more information to do better advice, because it's a lot of knowledge to put in and a lot of data if you want to do it yourself as a small firm.
There is another question about cryptocurrency. What is the taxation practices regarding the cryptocurrencies that you are aware of?
It was not. Can you explain it again? It was very not loud.
Yes. So the question is trading of cryptocurrencies, and what is the taxation practices that you are aware of?
Well, that's interesting, because I saw another question also. There's a lot of interest on, let's say, what's our position on taxation, and let's say when I was in New York in 2016 on the Counter Blockchain Coalition, this was the same discussion. Okay, what's the taxation of cryptocurrency? But the most important thing is, how can we, because everybody knows who's working with cryptocurrencies, you have a public key and a private key. And the private key is something you need to that's your ownership. But you need also to know that the private key is belonging to a certain person. So there's a lot of question regarding, let's say, who owns the cryptocurrency, and also the moment of, what's the word? Because if you know Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies go like this. And I know in 2018, there were a lot of people at 31st of December 2018 very rich, but in January, everybody was poor because the complete Bitcoin was going down. But if you look at, let's say, a way of thinking and a way of reporting, we make a statutory report on the 31st of December. You had a high amount of worth on cryptocurrencies if you put it on the balance. And let's say it was 14 days later, it was gone. It was vanished because the Bitcoin was going down. So it's a really big discussion, and also the discussion of a lot of countries is cryptocurrency. Is it an official payment? And I think for in the Netherlands, it's a stock. It's not let's say a liquid position. So it's different per country, but I don't know how it's, let's say, on the global scale. But it's one of the things I really want to share with your attendees. This is a very interesting question.
Thank you. Well, the next question is quite a difficult one. So the person who is asking this question describes the difficult situation of the SMPs in Georgia after the term lockdown. And considering the high taxation rate in Georgia for the SMPs and high rate of bank interest for the bank loans, it's very difficult for the SMPs to go through the digital transformation and acquire necessary skills and expertise. So what would be your advice facing this situation?
Well, it's a really, let's say, small steps. First of all, very small steps. I know I read the question, and let's say you can copy paste it to other countries also. So we are lucky in the Netherlands. We already made this step, but if you start from the beginning of digitalization and you want to help your clients at the current situation, it's difficult. So making small steps, and but also I think this is also a discussion which you need to, like what I'm doing now. I open the door with the European Banking Federation to see what is the position of the banks, because they have the same issue, because they have clients which they don't know if the clients can pay their the debts at a certain moment, and they rely on what we provide as important information. Is this company will they stay alive, the continuity? So there are a lot of, it's a complex answer and complex question also, but I think it's an interesting, and I'm sad we have to do it on this short webinar, but normally if you are local, you can really make a discussion with a lot of people to see what could be the best steps to make. But I think it's, my only answer will say make small steps to see which steps you can make with your organization. And not make let's say the big step to see, okay, we changed a lot of things so we can help our clients on because the situation is very difficult. What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was going to add here, as you say, I mean, it's really tough times right now for small business and for small practices. There's just not a lot of money around to invest in the technologies, and in particular the time needed to train staff to use the solutions, for example. It does, as Martin says, it's not like one is expected to make a big quantum leap in one go. It has to be a step-by-step process, starting, I think, with trying as far as possible to digitalize your present services. So whatever you're currently providing at the moment, my view, and it's a view supported by a recent publication of the ACCA in conjunction with the Singapore accountancy profession, is focus on digitalizing the delivery of your current service offerings. So if you're predominantly focused on audit, then you should be focused on digitalizing that, adopting audit software tools, training your staff in the use of those tools, etc. And then consider expanding into, for example, advisory services using the appropriate technologies. We've already touched on a couple of the data analytics tools, for example. But yeah, it's just not easy. There isn't any easy answer to the question.
There's one thing what's happening in another country, in Belgium, is what you see is that there is an organization who has and that's very new in the accounting business. There's an equity partner who says, okay, I will put some money in a knowledge organization which accountants can make use of. So let's say on technology, they hire the best people, and you as an accounting firm can connect to this organization, and you make use of the technology, HR, etc. Because you see a lot of this is also happening in the UK now. Small, medium-sized practices are looking for collaboration with another organizations, and as you know, if you want to set up something, even as an SMP, you need to have some funding to set something up. And you see that some equity partners now are very interested because they know that the accounting industry is a trusted industry, and they also treat it like that. but they also see the challenges they have on digitalization. So especially in Belgium now, there's an organization already have 18 accounting firms all over Belgium who are connected to each other. They have their own, let's say, they keep their own, let's say, the outcome to the clients. They're not changing other names. But on the backside, they can use the let's say, on the back office from this big organization, technology, but also knowledge from advisor, etc., on digital topics. So that's an interesting development I'm looking at, and probably it will hit the Netherlands. But that can also be interesting for, let's say, on the former question, connect with each other and see how you can strengthen each other on certain topics, because it's impossible for a small SMP with 10 employees to make big steps, let's say. That's why I mentioned make little steps, and what Paul said, focus on what you're best in. But if you really want to make a difference, connect with other accounting firms and see how you can collaborate on digitalization, and still it keeps your own, let's say, face to your clients, but on the other hand, it makes you a bigger organization on that digital level. It's just an idea, so I don't know if it's possible in your organization, but it's an interesting development on our side.
Thank you for this interesting answer and useful answer. We can, I think, take one or two questions. If there is someone who would prefer to ask this question verbally, Georgian and Russian could be possible too. Please raise your hands, and while we are waiting for another couple of questions, I will ask my own question. Two key aspects of practice transformation are the leveraging of technology and business diversification. Do you imagine these are done in lockstep or one after the other? For example, should SMPs digitalize, then diversify? What would be your answer? I think you're on mute.
I'm not doing it anymore. Okay, so yeah, first digitalize yourself, because based on what you did, if you digitalize yourself, then you have more, let's say, insight of the capabilities of data, which, let's say, in my position as a data-driven organization, digitalize first, and then look what you can do with new services, or let's say expand on other services. It's one step and then the other step. And that's my proposition. That's from my position. I don't know how Paul is looking at that, but don't do it. Let's say don't change the let's say with other services, because otherwise you have we made the mistake in 2016. Let's say I learned from that. Don't do it the other way.
Yeah, I mean, I agree totally, Martin. I wouldn't, of course, disagree with you, but no, seriously, I think I already alluded to this before. The first thing that you should do is try to digitalize as far as possible what you're currently doing before you start to think about broadening your service offerings. So, for example, if you're a primarily compliance-driven practice providing audit or accounts prep services, then you should automate those services first, and then think about business diversification. Should we start to offer advisory services? And if so, what kind of technologies are available? For example, data analytics tools that can help us do that in a competent way for SME clients. Incidentally, and you'll see it in the readings list when we come to the final slide, we have, with the help of the World Bank, translated an ACCA Singapore accountancy profession document, which talks about how the kind of the process, if you like, of digitalizing and then diversifying one after the other. So that is available in Georgian. I'm not so sure that it's available, however, in Russian.
Thank you. We do not have any further questions, and I don't see any hands, I guess. So I will proceed to closing this the webinar unless you have anything to add.
Yeah, Irina, I just have a couple of closing remarks on the slide, and also just maybe touch on the fact that this presentation, the recording and the slides will be made available after the event. What I'll do is I'll just pull up the slide. This was the slide. So we've just concluded the Q&A session. For those of you that wish to direct specific questions to Martin or myself, you'll see on the screen our email addresses. We're quite happy to receive your questions. We will, subsequent to this event, try to identify some free self-learning tools. I think that was one of the key questions that was being asked, I believe, by Murad. And that, I think, was a very good question, the answer to which I think will be relevant to practically everybody on the call today. In terms of closing remarks, then, I just wanted to stress, as Martin and I have said, you really do need to make digital transformation a high priority. You got to disrupt yourselves or stand to be disrupted. That being said, of course, you don't need to do everything overnight. Constraints are such that you need to adopt a step-by-step phased approach, digitalize what you're currently doing as far as possible before you think about digitalizing and offering services, new services. IFAC's Practice Transformation Action Plan, a roadmap to the future, sets out some simple steps to take in terms of going down that digital transformation path. As I mentioned, there's a section of the action plan that specifically looks at leveraging technologies. And after the event today, which I hope you all enjoyed, we're glad for your participation and your questions. Do look out for the video recording and the slides, which will be made available in PDF after the event, either on the website of SARAS or provided via email. And we will be having another webinar planned for mid-April. The exact date and guest speakers have yet to be determined, but this webinar will take place in mid-April, and it will focus on business diversification, how you as a practice can start to branch out into offering different types of services. This is the last slide, Irina. This is the slide which basically summarizes all of the relevant readings for today's session. All the links here are live once you receive the presentation, and you can see that the Georgian language translations are given in the parentheses after each item. So that closes what I wanted to say. I just wanted to thank very much the WorldBank staff for help in putting this together today, and also to help my friend and colleague Martin de Bie for sharing his expertise with us.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank our distinguished speakers, first of all, for delivering very useful and interesting presentations and discussions. I would like to thank all the participants for being here with us. As Paul mentioned, please do look for the materials if you're interested in them. At saras.g, you will find the presentations in English and Georgian. The Russian translation will be sent to you via email, as I as you probably noticed, we have translated a lot of relevant materials for you into Georgian, and you will also find those in the links in the presentation, but also on the SARS.g at your convenience. Thank you, and we are looking forward to you joining our next seminar, webinar in